Well, howdy, Pastor Mark Driscoll here with the weekly Hey Pastor Mark newsletter for Mark Driscoll Ministries. If you've got a question, send it in to hello@markdriscoll.org. This week's question comes in from Pastor Adam. Thank you, Pastor Adam, for sending in your question and serving people for Jesus. He says, I have a question for you. What advice do you have for a parent whose firstborn daughter is itching her way to the age where you should talk to them about sex? Got any advice? Let me try and hit this real quickly for you. I've got 5 kids, ages 10 to 19. So my wife Grace and I, we have a child in elementary school, junior high, 2 boys in high school, and a daughter in college. So we are right in the thick of it with you, my friend. A couple of things I will say. Number one, you don't have the talk, you have talks. The worst thing you can do with your kid is sit them down and just one and done, have the most awkward, intense, back up the truck, offload all the information that you could ever think about for sex and say, okay, I'm glad that's over, now let's move on with our life. It's a drip, not a dump. It's a bit of information over the course of time. It starts when they are little and it's age appropriate as they grow, and it opens a communication channel to where this is just sort of a natural, normal part of the parent-child relationship, where you check in with them, they feel free to ask you questions, and it becomes more of a normative part of the conversation of life. You don't want it to be just a big conversation that you have once that's really overwhelming and awkward. You want to open up a safe relationship in which to communicate. And this starts when they are little, before they go to school. You think of really little kids. And it's teaching them, here are your body parts, and go ahead and give them the actual anatomical name, so that if, God forbid, someone wants to see or touch them in an area, they know what are private parts that are not to be shown or shared, that they can communicate to you if they have any discomfort or pain or anything of that nature in a particular part of their body. You want to give them the anatomical facts of, here are your parts, and these things are private, and nobody else gets to see them, and nobody else gets to touch them. And at that age as well, I always like to tell our kids when they were little, we love surprises, but we don't keep secrets. Because sometimes either little children will want to see or touch each other, or adults that are predatory will want to see or touch a child inappropriately. And then they'll say, okay, I need you to keep this a secret. And I always told our kids when they were little, we don't keep any secrets. We don't have secrets. We don't believe in secrets. And then the kids would be like, so what if mom asks me what her birthday present is, or do we have anything planned? Should I lie? And I was like, because sometimes little kids are real literal. They don't get some of the nuances in conversation. I said, well, we believe in surprises. And surprises are good things that we're going to do or give to somebody, and we want to wait to give them that surprise. So we believe in surprises, but not secrets. Surprises are good things. Secrets are bad things. Surprises are things that we're going to let them know when it's time. Secrets are things that you're trying to hide because they're wrong and they're not safe. And so when they're little, it's starting with a conversation about the body parts and propriety and modesty and privacy and those kinds of issues. As they get a little older and they move towards school age, well, now what you've got is, in addition to the flood of media, which is always giving a lot of sexual information to children, whether we like it or not, now you've also got the conversations that are happening on the playground and at recess and in the lunchroom with the kids. And there's always some kids that know a whole lot more than they should, and they've already started watching pornography. The first exposure to internet pornography now is around age 11. My research indicates the number one consumer of pornography is 12 to 17-year-old boys. So if you're thinking, when should we talk to them? Well, imagine there's a kid that has a 11, 12, 13-year-old brother or sister that's watching pornography, and then that is sort of in the conversation with the younger children, or if they share a room together, now the younger children are exposed to it. It means, if anything, let's err on the side of a little bit younger, because if we wait too long, they may have already had a lot of exposure and experience that we didn't even see coming, and it can be very unsafe. And some of that comes in through the conversations that kids are having with other kids at school. And so at that age, when they're in school, it becomes part of the conversation where you're saying, age appropriate. And so it's age appropriate, and it's also emotional maturity appropriate. Some kids, they're little, they're more emotionally mature, they can handle certain conversations. Others are far less mature. Some kids, when they're younger, they have all kinds of curiosity. Sometimes you'll see this even with kids that are 8, 9 years of age. They talk about wanting a boyfriend or having a girlfriend. You're like, what do you need that for? You're about this close to having a job and being ready for marriage. You're not this close. And there's this curiosity, and sometimes dating and boyfriend and girlfriend can start at a very young age. And so it is all about appropriateness for where your child is at. Let's say your child is very curious. Then you're going to have the conversation early and include more information. Maybe you have a kid that they're just like, I don't care. I think girls are icky. I think boys are icky. I'm not interested. It doesn't bother me. I don't care. Okay, well then you want to start the conversation, but it needs to be age and emotionally appropriate, getting into issues of ultimately, you want to get married, you want to fall in love, you want to have kids, but to get there, you need to be responsible, you need to be an adult, you need to be ready to provide emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally. You're not there. Someday we hope that you get there. You don't need a romantic, dating type relationship until you're headed toward marriage, because all that will do is increase temptation. You're having this conversation with the kids. By puberty, this is where things start to adjust and change, because now the kids' bodies are changing and now the hormones are raging, and all of a sudden, their sexual interest tends to increase as a general rule. And this is where you're really increasing the conversation. And it's that conversation that you've had and you keep adding to it. Just think of any way that you teach your kids. You don't sit down with them once and teach them how to read. Okay, today I'm going to teach you how to read. Okay, glad that's over. Today I'm going to teach you how to do math. Great, today that's over. How to walk in sexual integrity? Well, that's age and emotional appropriate, and it's part of a discipleship and education process that continues really not just until they leave home, but through their early married years and helping them have a healthy relationship. And you never stop being a parent. It doesn't mean you don't need to demand everybody's private information when they're a married adult, but you want to be part of the conversation of life with your children as is appropriate, helping them to walk in freedom and in holiness and in purity and enjoying all that God has for them. And those puberty years are really crucial and critical, because now it's getting more specific. Now they don't just have a general interest. Sometimes there's someone in particular that they're interested in or they're drawn to. This is where you start having more personal conversations. You don't have it in front of the family. You don't include other people. You don't embarrass them. You don't shame them, because you'll shut them down. You want to draw them up. You don't want to close them up. Okay, well, why do you like them? Or what interests you in them? And, how could I help encourage you in this desire? And what you always want to do is see if there's something positive in the desire or the curiosity or the interest that you can highlight. Okay, great. Well, you're a young man, you found a young gal, you like her, she loves the Lord, she's a sweet girl, she's got a nice family. Let's encourage all of that. You're not ready to be in a romantic relationship, you're 13. You're not ready to be in a serious relationship, you're 14. But let me nurture those aspects of your desires that are good, not shame you, not embarrass you, not shut you down, but to build you up. And it's encouraging. Well, that's a good desire. So you got to guard your heart, like Proverbs says. You need to wait patiently. Let's give it time. This probably isn't the person you're going to marry, but I want to affirm these things and talk with you why you're interested with them and how you interact with them and what you do with your technology and direct contact and honoring their parents. And it becomes a lot of specific conversation up until the dating and courting years, where now they're not just interested in general, there's someone in specific and they're considering them as a husband or wife or partner for life. And so when you get to that age, now you're getting into specific conversations. Boundaries, touch, appropriateness, honoring the family, walking in purity, and these are going to be ongoing conversations where you're checking in. How's it going? How are your struggles? How are your temptations? How is your communication? How are they responding? Is there anything I need to know? Is there anything I can help you with? Is there anything I can pray for you about? And when kids hit that age, teens, early 20s, it's a lot of listening, being emotionally present, not being distracted, and asking the questions and leaving the awkward silence, drawing them out to talk so that it becomes a normal, natural conversation. You know that you've made good progress when the kids just come up to you, hey, I got a question about this, or there's something I want to talk to you about, or something went sideways, or I'm tempted with something. That's when you know, when they initiate and open up, that you've actually gotten to a healthy place in the relationship. A couple of things I would add as well is be honest about your own failures as is age appropriate. Not to give permission to your children for rebellion. For example, I was not a virgin when I met my wife, Grace. We started dating at 17, and we did things that were immoral and inappropriate. And then I got saved at the age of 19 and became a Christian and realized I've been doing this wrong. I've not been doing this God's way. So we had to repent and stop and practice self-control and chastity from that point until marriage, and then fidelity in marriage. And my kids know this. And what I tell them is, I did some things wrong that caused some real grief and pain and shame, and that really harmed our intimacy and our friendship in the early years of our marriage. And I love you so much, I don't want you to make the same mistakes I did. And so I'm honest with them. And my hope is, as I'm honest with my kids, if they're struggling or even if they sin, that they would find me to be a safe person to come talk to, because I've already talked about my struggles and my failures in my past, and I want to be a safe person for them to bring their struggles and their failure to, because it's always better when a kid comes clean and they've not gotten caught, because sometimes by then they've gotten themselves in real trouble. Maybe they've been sexually assaulted because they put themselves in a situation that you didn't know about and it was unsafe, and tragically that happens frequently. Or maybe they're now addicted to porn, or maybe now they're pregnant or got an STD, and you're like, man, it would have been good to have an honest conversation about your struggles before we got to the place that we had this kind of issue. Number two, always affirm the positive and the desire. Oh, you like them, they're a nice kid, you're not ready, but how can we get you ready? Anything that's positive. Number three, don't make a good thing gross. It says that the husband and the wife were naked, they felt no shame. That's God's intent from creation. Don't take a good thing, make it a gross thing. And what some parents do, their whole goal is to keep the kids virgins until they get married. And let me say, that's a great goal as a dad. That's my goal for each of my 5 kids. But what you don't want to turn sex into, it's dirty, nasty, vile, and wrong. So save it for the one you love. And you get kids so grossed out by sex and so abhorrent of sex and so scared of sex that you do keep them chaste until marriage, but now you've really confused their mind and corrupted their desires and conflicted their marriage in their early marriage years, because they see something that God made as good as gross. And you don't want to do that. You want to hold up God's standard of good and prepare children to rise to that standard and enjoy the gift of marital intimacy that God gives. And then lastly, number 4, if you read the book of Proverbs, the way that the parents parent there, the mom and the dad, they'll look at positive and negative examples in the lives of other people. Oh, do you see that guy? Well, his house is falling down and the weeds are growing up because he's a sluggard, he doesn't work. You need to work if you want to keep your stuff together. You see that person, they're really hungry. You know why they're hungry? If they get any money, the first thing they do is they go gamble and blow it, son, so don't do that. Proverbs uses positive and negative examples, and this is how wisdom works. And so as you're watching television or cultural narratives of people's behavior is coming into your home, or there are people that you know, positive and negative examples, it's not being moralistic, it's not gossiping about people, it's not doing it publicly, but it's pulling the child aside and just saying, okay, you're 12 and this gal is 20 and she's in college and she's in a dating relationship and we know them. Do you see how they're doing it? It's a really good example. He's a good guy. They love the Lord. They're involved with their families. They're practicing chastity and purity. They're being patient, but they're conducting themselves in an honorable way. I want you to watch that. That's a really good example. Let's learn from that kid. Okay, over here. Oh boy. Okay. Well, she was sneaking around and disobeying parents and hooked up with a really bad guy and he broke her heart and now she's really depressed. And okay, do you see that, sweetheart? Okay, let's not do that. Let's pray for them. Let's not gossip about them. Let's not besmirch their character. Let's love them. Let's want good for them, but let's learn from that. Let's let other people set positive and negative examples so that we can glean wisdom, because wisdom is gleaned either through our own experience or the experience of someone else. And Proverbs uses the experience of the examples of others to teach and to train children. And so I'll close with one example. When my daughter was very young, 10, 12, there was an older gal in the church who was college age that she really looked up to. And this gal was really godly, extraordinarily gifted, talented, godly, wonderful young woman. And then in her early 20s, she kind of fell in love with a guy and he fell in love with her. And so my daughter now is entering into her teen years and she got to watch how they treated one another and work through things. And she got to see them ultimately married and then have a child and then have a second child. And so she got to draft behind this really godly gal and learn from her. Praise God for people like that. And also sometimes the negative examples can serve as well. I had a conversation with my son not long ago family that we know, the dad had been doing things on social media that he hadn't any permission to do, and he hooked up, digitally with an old gal he dated, and the next thing you know, they're talking, and next thing you know, they meet, and next thing you know, he's committing adultery, and next thing you know, he's running off with another woman. I sat down with my son, I'm like, okay, let's learn from this. If you have a private communication channel with a woman that you're not married to, and it starts to turn toward romantic and or erotic, you see where this becomes a real temptation. And he probably didn't intend to really hurt his kids, but that's what he ended up doing in running off with another woman. So we had a conversation about that. Positive and negative examples. Thanks so much, Pastor Adam, for the question. I'm out of time. That's Pastor Mark Driscoll here with the weekly Hey Pastor Mark newsletter from Mark Driscoll Ministries. Thanks a bunch.